Honorable Daniels. Yana the Chetat, Naya, we could go back to the committee, additional questions, comments, or go to vote on it. Joe Hateko, Honorable Daniels.
Yes, thank you again. Good Mr. Vice Chair. Yeah, I see that I hear him. Good sabe tan how did I good so go quick the check good RDC with that a fan yadil hit Halita is at all next to the Papa Yatiko. So these are 15 findings. So this legislation is a good legislation for the Nenegi and out of Donald Ego. Hashin Nikodo Hashin Sogo E Nagata at the chapter level is gonna yada was after let's go because right now we have this ARPA fund that is here in Winter Rock. So Kodo Nagata I see Kodo should say Yana this kid Hela that Egin Hainas no that Ikodo Yahat Kodo has all jet Hela that Egi projects that I don't know pay for that. Kodo died Hela Nas no Yahat Zico. So at this point in time, acting CSC, Mr. Sosi, he's assigned to Untitled Chapter. But another thing is with ASC, they're very stretched thin out within the Kayenta area. So with there's another chapter that I represent too in the Veda, not just on chapter. They don't have a CSC. And ASC, they go there one time out of a week. Out of thing with Ojeto. So so ASC those that I see the nanas does. So I don't hear that. I don't have an cost. So I don't know the great equal the findings that Office of Auditor General found at Ojeto chapter. Those are minor. Those are minor findings that can be resolved internally. Should say Delegate Keon McGee Jr. This all happened within the pandemic period. So in a great like I indicated, Ojeto was once a hot spot on the Navajo Nation. 42 cases in one day. So I speak with the Diego even the how to lead and great Ojeto. I don't know if I great there's no misuse of funds. It's the great and the great the findings the minor the like the assets those weren't tagged. Some of them they weren't tagged, so that can be fixed in a day or two. I don't know all the others. So I'm going to ask my agent about how much time do we need to fix all these findings. Do we need the whole 6 months or a year or maybe less than 6 months as a vegan? I don't know. There was a similar legislation that came before RDC a couple of weeks back. Delegate Yellow here. A very hard rock chapter. So what we recommended. I agree with that. At that time, I indicated I don't support sanctioning chapters. The snow don't even matter. Right now, Right now is not a good time to sanction a chapter. They're not the we have these dollars that are here in Winter Rock. The $2 billion that we got from the federal government. Big major infrastructures to help our constituents at the local level. For idiot, I see even not to sanction the chapter. Yes, just so you could they'll get yellow here, but Yagi I recommend it or station for you. Just stick with to Budget and Finance Committee, because this legislation is destined for the B&F Committee. With your recommendation, Budget and Finance Committee to not sanction the chapter to have a meeting with BCD and also Office of Auditor General. These chapters sanction legislation to fix some of the findings that they have at the chapter level. So I don't know chapter the new officials they inherited this the previous the former CSC so I just think that during the pandemic I see them I see pandemic COVID-19 so even but like I indicate there's no mismanagement of funds within the chapter these are just minor findings data a week that's difficult so officials but they're new officials so AMS husband still has seen acting CSC then gave Mr. Sosi ASC husband so the former chapter officials new official I see that's Mr. Vice Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Daniels.
I would like to say something.
Excuse me. Let's see, Honorable Daniels, for your local chapter officials, current officials, so that has been though I see it's better wasn't so then the quite get answers case but it adequate how it's out of respect and courtesy to what I been to what Mr. Sosi also in his comments earlier if more time can be allowed the chapter to work on these findings to know that'll get say that hard rock chapter bana da ilna to sunda to wala ajigo that the kachona hadlen kashonanta so to that go by yato so the question recommendations naspa policy change AATG nifige Bahanet Zada. I see Yadi Chita Bahanet Zada. Bendadid Nasta had no Ada Hot Echo policy change in this area of sanctioning chapters, the Quag policy, but STD in the need in show Halita after the name. Ben Nadid Nisho had none had an issue in Nasta. Joe had Bansas Kisiko Kodo. Chapter officials, Mr. Daniels, Chinanta.
Mr. Vice Chair, I need to have thinking that about end Kodota, Kodota, job, Kodota. Maybe give some time to them Kodota. Mr. Vice Chair, thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Holliday, chapter official, Dean President, though Vice President. Earlier you had introduced yourselves, so you're still on the call. If you can keep your comments brief to the point. It looks like we have some direction to go in with this. Of course, Untitled Chapter officials.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to say something. My name is Jean Holliday. I'm a new elected vice president of Untitled Chapter, yeah. And we were community members here. And our past officials were James Adekai, president, and the late Albert Holliday was the vice president, and he was my brother. Yes, we were the hot spot, and my brother Albert died of COVID-19. But on maybe the official, it was one of the official passing away of COVID might have affected their performance and their thinking. Otto Billy Charlie was the grazing official, and Linnell Parrish was the treasurer and secretary. Otto Peggy is still the AMS clerk. And everybody hear me? I feel like talking to myself.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Otto Shirley Bedoni was the CSCA retiree. So to me, I am a community member. I was a community member, and I did say some things about these allegations as a community member. Vice President Bandish Wache. And today's president is Willis Begay. Otto myself as vice president. Otto Moretta Bedoni is the new secretary and treasurer, and Benedict Daniel is the new grazing official. It's really frustrating to know that our hands are tied, and that would be the word for it. Whereas we can't go behind the CSC or the AMS and look for documents. Our hands are tied, and through your procedures and rules, we can't go in the back of their files and look for these receipts. Like I said, it's very frustrating, and it's not fair that we are put in this position where we're told to correct these allegations and these findings. And like I said, I feel like my hands are tied and I can't look for the documents that I'm told to look for when the clerical or the late CSCs told us not to go back there. Things like that are happening in the office. Otto, I like the way Miss Yellowman stated that everybody should be accountable. The chapter house, the official, the administration. I like that idea to learn a lesson and to know what records we have. I like that idea and be accountable for it. And to my understanding, I think as a new official, I think the previous official should be also accountable for these findings because they're the ones that did this. So, and then I like the way Honorable Gay was stating and stating these facts on our chapter findings and how COVID has affected our leadership, what's going on. Considering thank you so much.
Okay, Hakoshi. Mr. Begay. J Todo.
Yata. Yeah, chapter president was Begay. Quite you got an abgee of seed kido. State all next to no bahame. Ado, I need on don't sheet either so. Jot and law. Ado, Shidani cat. Sidos left Eda Quaggy. Halled on sheet either. I don't know the net and heart is the Quaggy all last Edo, little quite sound of click and shit on me. If that's what the people are looking at. Is it international? Edo had on his seat. A buy Anna, Jot. I don't know, shut it in it. Later, what I officials said I enjoy that the house Canada. Oh, I will get that slow. I don't know the car. I don't know what. Oh, the Benasa is dead at the Hola. The what another. Oh, it is a later, Hatashi, I'll let I don't need certification that I don't need. You see, Untitled Chapter. Not a certified never ever. Oh, I think I want that to hold just here's the man at the name saying that the certification had all left. Oh, you are 11th on this. So what Objective Man Valley area. If we don't have certification, that are non heat, or not are non heat. So even in a yours area go on. And quite able net loud on the Johnson one this case. And it's the quite national, though the other hand, the so what's that? A kid, so you were that, you were that. So I ate a now, can I later? I don't know, all that. I said that the show or not, so that's the name. Oh, they got one that I say little don't hasn't the shit out, Hola. She does the height, so had it our yapney key. Jot Edat, Jot another can sack but could eat the never and heart that isn't so. Every how what and law. I don't know. You can see those are craggy other ad night. It don't hit not that one. I don't the vice president elect the I don't hit not that one. I don't last year in the vice president, I had made it's not God not so. There's in the chapter property, there's in what's that? Okay, Objective Chapter went through a special review audit with the Navajo Nation Audit General back in 2019. Report number 19-23 had two findings. One, travel requests and expense reimbursements are not properly approved, and two, control over chapter properties need improvement to ensure property. Then in June of 2021, report number 21-14 stated that the Objective Chapter did not implement the corrective action plan. Myself and Marietta Bedoni, Chapter Secretary Treasurer, took oath of office in January 6, 2021. We did have a chapter vice president that took oath with us, but he stepped down. Just last week, the chapter vice president was filled in by Jean Holiday, and she took her oath as well. The former CSE has also retired from Ojito chapter since the position has been vacant. We have received technical assistance from the Kayenta ASC in accordance with the ASC plan of operations. Being the Ojito chapter is a non-certified chapter, please understand that we have new officials that have come on board, and now we have this audit that we are facing with. We received a letter from the Navajo Nation Office of the Audit General dated May 6, 2021, that NOAG will not be doing an on-site field visit. The field work will be done remotely. The scope of work was time period from October 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. We have been informed that the scope of work time frame was changed as well to review the travel documents because there was no travel during the scope of work. So the travel documents that were reviewed was during the time of the pandemic. Please remember, during this time, the Navajo Nation was going through the first round of COVID cases, and the community of Ojito was considered to be a hot spot for quite some time. I remember the cause in the Ojito Scout Rock scene, and we did lose community members to COVID. In fact, we lost our former chapter vice president to COVID as well during this time. Some of the Navajo Nation departments were closed, and some departments were restricted to work remotely. There was a memo issued from the DCDC or DCD to close the non-LGA chapters, and the ASC office were restricted to just work from home. Ojito chapter, a non-LGA certified chapter, was closed, but the former CSE will still work from home to try to get the supplies to the community members and participate in weekly calls with the IHS and other calls related to COVID. Ojito chapter was cited for inventory, which is part of the property section of FMS. We need clear guidance from DOJ and NOAG and what non-LGA certified chapters should be audited on. The opinion from Auditor General AG-01-10 was issued on April 16, 2010. We need clear legal classification from RDC and DOJ on this matter. We ask that you reconsider the sanction. We have been working closely with Kayenta ASC to improve our internal policies. Both of these findings have been addressed. These sanctions will hinder our process to try to make improvement for our community and persuade LGA certification status. Thank you for your time to listen to me, up to my update, and allow me to be a part of this meeting. So as the new officials, you know, we're trying to be certified and try to work with the people. So chat.
Thank you, Mr. Brigade. Mrs. Holiday, for representing your chapters.
Ms.
Concerns
Holiday.
and interests here. So, committee members, back to you, Mr. Honorable Stewart. You had a comment to make?
Oh, yeah, this is the comment the station so. Going out in answer that don't the Shanaka, those my the cat officials that are sending you around the Dr. Yellowman and your staff, Mr. Martin and Mr. Associate like yacht in Nana. Okay, this is the sanction chapter in Benigi for Ojito. Newly elected chapter officials and Benigi in Hija Hadasti. So Kodogi a behas, Higi as a delegate for 4 chapters and representing 4 defined agencies. So these sanctioned chapters, I have talked with Dr. Yellowman on these issues before. Because there's, as a chapter, there's a lot of areas where they're not monitored and they're not part of any branch. Even with the chapter staff, there is no set performance evaluation, employee evaluation, but then there's nothing set for them to say that this is what your criteria will be, this is what you have to meet. But yet, on a budget form, they submit those to the oversight. And then they submit that to the ASCs. Then the ASCs go ahead and they provide these documents. And then they go out and they report to the chapters. They try to assist the chapters. Then there are some ASCs that don't go out to the chapters as well because the staff are not too willing to work with them as well. Same way with the officials, we have some out there that are willing to work with the staff, willing to assist them, but they don't do that as well either. Because of the chapter staff telling them, no, you can't come in, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. But if these, no matter if they're how minor they are, if these policies were followed, we all have policies to follow. When you become an employee of the nation, and then to say that you didn't ask for this. As an elected official, when you go into office at a chapter, you know what your expectation is. You know what you're supposed to do. So this was inherited to the new administration officials now. I think working closely with ASC would get you out of that predicament. And I'm saying that from experience because we had a chapter for 20 years that was sanctioned. The longest sanctioned chapter on Navajo. With the help of the temporary chapter coordinator that went in there to put his foot down to say, officials, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to follow these written policies according to Navajo Nation. That's how they got out of sanction, correcting all those findings with the AMS and the temporary employees that they hired, teaching them as well. From that education and that teaching to the temporary employee, another temporary employee went to another chapter and started cleaning up that chapter. That chapter is getting ready to come out of sanction again, too. So when you follow your policies in black and white, you can do it. When you have that team effort, you can do it. So I believe these sanction chapters need to follow those policies to get out of sanction. If a chapter that I've had for 20 years can come out of sanction, all chapters should be able to. Those are the comments I want to make, Shaja. Thank you.
Yeah, Honorable Stewart, for your comments there. Starting back to the committee members, RDC, any other comments and questions?
Chairman Callan.
Honorable Begay, you have the floor.
Chairman, I think we have talked about it, but one question to the Auditor General: was this particular finding review done on site, or was it done over the phone? That's one question. Could the legislative council maybe provide a language similar to what we've done, and I believe the chapter hasn't responded to Delegate Daniel's question. How much time do they need to get the situation to be resolved? I know we gave 6 months to the Hard Rock chapter with 3 months update review back to their RDC. Recommended land, which once it's developed, additional chairman. But the direct question to the Auditor General.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Brigade. The question to Auditor General's office. Ada, can you provide a response?
Hello, Vice Chair. Karen, let me answer.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair. This is Helen Brown, the Delegated Auditor General.
Yes,
Can
Ms.
you
Brown,
hear me okay? Okay,
yes,
thank you. Yeah, thank you, sir. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the RDC committee. I apologize for not being on the call earlier. I was on the call for the BNF comprehensive budget hearing. But I did get on the call during lunchtime, and I've been listening to the conversations regarding this legislation pertaining to Untitled Chapter. To answer Mr. Begay's question about how this audit was conducted, when we say remotely, we work with the chapter. It was not just done over the phone. We requested for documentation from the chapter. A lot of that was done via emails. A lot of the documents were in the form of digital format. The reason why we handle our audits remotely is because, one, the legislative branch, which is what we're part of, has not lifted their travel restrictions, so we cannot travel at this time. And also, number two, we are adhering to the public health orders. So for that reason, we have not made any visits to the chapters on site since the COVID pandemic started. And so a lot of our work has been done remotely. We also use teleconference calls with the staff at the chapter level. We also do video conferencing where it allows, but a lot of this is contingent upon the internet capabilities at the chapter level. Sometimes the internet is not the best, so we end up having to fall back on teleconference calls. But there's a lot of ongoing discussions and exchange using those different mediums. We try to work with the chapter based on what they have. There's chapters that use Zoom. We use Zoom meetings. We use Microsoft Teams. We use Google. There's all different formats that we've become accustomed to, just like all the other Navajo Nation departments and programs as we work through this whole COVID pandemic. So, contrary to what maybe have been implied, our review is just not based on telephone conversations. We do look at the documentation. We provide a list to the chapter at the very beginning when we started an engagement. We said, these are the documents that we will need. And when it comes to a CAP follow-up review, we're focusing on what's within the corrective action plan. And the documents that we provide to the chapter is based on that corrective action plan. If it's not an issue in the CAP, we don't ask for those documentations. So for Ojeko, the documents that we asked for was related to the travel and it was related to the property management. There are 2 findings for which there were 14 corrective measures. And so when we do CAP follow-up reviews, we're verifying if those corrective measures were implemented. If they are implemented, then the audit finding has essentially been resolved. Unfortunately, in this case, we only found 2 corrective measures that were implemented. That is the reason why we have concerns that the audit findings have not been fully resolved. So that's my response to Mr. Brigay's first question. The second question about how much time may be needed, really this is a determination by the chapter. I use the phrase, the ball is back in their court, because they're the ones that know their day-to-day operations. They know their staffing situation. They know the working relationship between the staff and the officials, the working relationship between the chapter and ASC. So they're the best people to determine how much time is needed. So when a chapter goes into sanction, we basically tell them that you have to determine how much time you need. And when you have fully implemented your cap, then you can come back to our office and request for a revisit, and then we will schedule you accordingly to go back out there. So yes, we don't want to sanction chapters, but on the other hand, we're obligated to look at what the chapter has done with respect to the corrective action plan. And keep in mind that the chapter had 1 year to implement this corrective action plan. And like Mr. Daniels said, there was 2 findings. And so from our standpoint, you know, Untitled Chapter was unique in the sense that this is the one chapter where we had a chapter audit that had only 2 findings. For other chapter audits, on average, we have like 10, 12 findings. And so Untitled had only 2 findings. And so we really, from our end, we also had expectations that they could address this right away. But again, it depends on what is going on at the chapter level. And we don't know that day to day, but we understand the chapter will work with ASC to address the action plan. So in terms of the timeline, if you want a timeline from our office, then yes, maybe 6 months is a good timeline. But again, it will really be dependent on the chapter. And right now, if they have staff vacancies, that may serve as a hindrance to the chapter. And I realize ASC is doing their best to help the chapters. And even when you have an SPPS serving as an acting CSC, which I kind of question, I'm not sure if even that's supposed to be going on, but they're doing what they can to assist the chapters, especially in these circumstances. And I want to make a note that Mr. Sosi said that, yes, Calvin Sosi said they were working on property, but it was during our review that I was getting calls from property management department asking why Untitled Chapter was demanding that that department go out there to tag their property. Why? And the chapter responded, because the Auditor General wants it done. So they were calling me asking for clarification as why are you demanding that our office go out there to Untitled Chapter to tag their property? And so I said, I'm sorry. I said, that's not from us, but there is an outstanding audit issue related to property management that the chapter has supposed to have addressed as part of their corrective action plan. They had a year to address that. And so I guess that is the reason why they're asking for your assistance. Fortunately, property management was able to accommodate the chapter, but you also have to keep in mind the corrective action plan is addressing internal controls. These are internal controls that we want the chapter to strengthen, to implement, and to practice every day on a routine basis. It's not just for the sake of an audit. This is something that they should implement and do on a continuous basis. And so the property tagging should have been done after the audit was completed, after the cap was approved. Then the chapter understands what needed to be done year after year on an annual basis. The same thing with the travel. We reported in the audit report that we had cited the chapter for lack of segregation of duties. We had the CSC doing everything within the travel process. That's an internal control deficiency. We offered audit recommendations on how to correct that. And if that was corrected, it needed to be carried forward. But when we came back and did the revisit, the process was still the same. We still had the CSC doing every step in that travel process. So that is the reason why we said those corrective measures were not implemented. And the risks associated with these audits are still there. They have not been mitigated. And so from an audit standpoint, that's what we need to look at, and that's what we're concerned about. So I just want to provide that as our response to the committee and with regards to some of the comments that I heard while I was on the line. But I hope I was able to answer Mr. Begay's question with regards to the timeline and to how we perform the audit. So that will be my response, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for responding. Honorable Begay, any follow-up questions, sir?
Chairman, appreciate the response. I don't know if Legislative Council had developed amending language. Chairman?
Okay, so Yes, thank you, Honorable Brigade. Ms. Khan earlier mentioned that you may need to assist the committee with language on the legislation here. Language similar to what we've done with the previous legislation for Hard Rock Chapter. Ibada ilya, so, do you have anything, Ms. Khan, on that?
Mr. Vice Chair, I've been listening to the conversation, and last time a corrective action plan legislation came before the Resources and Development Committee, there was concern also about imposing sanctions, and I don't have a copy of the language that I suggested be put into the report. I have fashioned some language here. However, I've been thinking about the legislation and would ask you, Resources and Development Committee, do you want an amendment to the legislation, or would you like your information to vote on what is to go into the report? I have been thinking about the legislation, and as with any legislation that comes before a standing committee can make an amendment that would go into the legislation. The standing committee can also vote for the legislation as it appears, or vote against the legislation as it appears. I would like a little direction from you. I have worked on some amendment language that would change the legislation, and it might not, the language that I have fashioned may or may not be acceptable to the Resources and Development Committee. The other way is I have fashioned language that would go into the report and no amendments would be done to the legislation. Mr. Vice Chair, I know that's a lot to handle at this moment, but I've been just want to speak the way, to present the way the Resources and Development Committee wants to speak, through the legislation, through an amendment, or through a statement in the report to the Budget and Finance Committee. Mr. Vice Chair, I give it back to you with that issue, and I have language for both manners. Either make an amendment to the legislation itself, or provide language for a report that would go back with the legislation to the Budget and Finance Committee that was in the same manner as was done previously. Mr. Vice Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Khan, for some of that advisement. I guess I would ask you to share the language that you have fashioned or created, the language for the amendment. Did you just try? Let's hear that, and then have committee respond to that. Ms. Khan.
Okay, Mr. Chair. Like I said, I have been listening to the members of the Resources and Development Committee, and there is not total consensus as far as what I have been listening to. And so I have just gone and listened to Mr. Kealan Begay's perspective. And I will read what I have as an amendment with regard to Mr. Kealan Begay's perspective. And I have a shorter one that I will read later. And so if you will bear with me, I will read what I have for an amendment. And this is, like I said, with regard to Mr. Kealan Begay's issues. There were other issues, but this is an amendment with regard to Mr. Kealan Begay's issues. With regard to the findings of the legislation, I have I've added new findings, additional findings, and that is the OJ chapter officials that were chapter officials during the time period contained in a special review of OJ chapter report number 19-23 are not the same chapter officials that are currently OJ chapter officials. Paragraph H, in the interest of fairness, the current OJ chapter officials should not be sanctioned for the actions described in report number 19-23 because the current OJ officials were not chapter officials at that time. Paragraph I, there is currently no CSC employed at the OJ chapter. Currently, there's only an AMS at the OJ chapter. Paragraph J, in the interest of fairness, the OJ chapter should not be sanctioned for actions described in report number 19-23 because there were not enough employees to assist the OJ chapter to accomplish the identified issues in report number 19-23. K, for the purpose of the chapter audits is to teach chapters how to manage the chapter functions. Sanctioning the OJ chapter and its chapter officials will not assist in this purpose. The Division of Community Development should continue to assist the OJ chapter to resolve the issues in the audit report 19-23. On page 3, section 3, and I strike out acceptance of Auditor General's report and imposition of sanctions, that is stricken, and new language is put in. Chapter allowed additional time to complete findings. New language, paragraph A, the Navajo Nation hereby allows the OJ chapter an additional, I just put 12 months to address the findings in the Auditor General's report number 19-23, attached as Exhibit 2. And then the paragraphs regarding sanctions and what the sanctions will include, sanctions to the chapter and sanctions to the officials are stricken. And then a new section 4 called directives. The Division of Community Development is hereby directed to continue to work with OJ chapter to remedy the issues identified in report number 19-23. Paragraph B, the Division of Community Development and the OJ chapter officials are hereby directed to report to the Resources and Development Committee and the Budget and Finance Committee on OJ chapter's completion and correction of issues in the audit report. This report is to occur no later than 3 months after this resolution is certified. A new section 5, revisit a special review, report number 19-23. A special review of OJ chapter report number 19-23 will be revisited within 12 months after this resolution is certified. And what I've read to you is what I would be inserted into the legislation and be amendments as the committee members know how amendments are made. These would go in within the body of the legislation. And that is just from what I've been hearing from the committee members. The other way of doing this is what we did similar to the previous audit report, and that is to put a language in the report to be and this is much shorter. And this language says this would not be an amendment to the legislation. It would be contained in the report. And the report would say, the Resources and Development Committee is concerned that the OJ chapter officials that were chapter officials during the time period contained in report number 19-23 are not the same chapter officials that are currently OJ chapter officials. In addition, the COVID pandemic has and continues to have an impact on addressing the findings. Therefore, the Resources and Development Committee recommends that the OJ chapter and its chapter officials be given an additional 12 months to address the findings within the Auditor General's report number 19-23. And this would not be an amendment. It would just be fashioned as a report that goes with the legislation to the Budget and Finance Committee. And that, of course, is much smaller and is not an amendment. It gets written into the report. Mr. Vice Chair, I hope I have not confused people too much, but those are two different ways of making your concerns known to the Budget and Finance Committee, which is the final authority on this legislation. Mr. Chair, if you would like, I could send those out to the members of the committee now, or wait for your direction at this point. Mr. Vice Chair, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Khan. I would ask you to go ahead and email the language to the committee members. Should I like to look at it black and white? When it's presented orally, then I can understand it, but to reinforce what I'm reading, what I understand, black and white. So if you can go ahead and email that to us, and then we can start looking at that and discussing. Of course, the amendments to amend the legislation language that was proposed or recommended based on our discussion earlier, a number of areas, number of concerns and questions based on that. A language is, I guess, been developed. Resource Development Committee, and then Chairman Nez has rejoined our call here for conducting, business on behalf of the committee at another committee meeting. The amendment CD now in the report you got to a the quite what the on the history had many a battle I think but none need done such a Shananta RDC comments, questions.
Chairman Callan.
Yes, Honorable Begay, you have the floor.
Chairman, I prefer to have the language to be included in the legislation rather than just making a recommendation in the report. The recommendation so that's my motion, though, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Begay. Once we receive the language, then that's what we would be referencing. Any other comments, questions while we're awaiting the email from Ms. Khan? She's going to email the language that could be proposed. Chinanda, Resource Development Committee. Comments, questions? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair, the committee members. Chairman Ness. Budget and Finance Committee. What Office of Legislative Counsel read to two areas. We can go this way or we can go this way. Then again, you have with the amendment or recommendation. Listening to the what Ms. Khan read, 12 months na niki. Ako kita today oya the bahate bikoto. Ani bahat kita these are findings that are minor. Ito to at least si bendaan meso. So kodo ya hati kodo da siliya ya hati kodo da delegate steward kodo da. It all depends on the staff out on the ASC, how they perform at the local level to fix these findings. No ya hati kodo ani hote kodo. I see kodo yendal meso si anai hadaw kahote. So nagay pat kodo nagay 12 months ago maybe come down to like at the most 6 months. What are the bonnet not on Senako? So 8 days kodo ba banana sito let kodo Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Daniels. The language has been emailed to you, and you can take a look at that. Although he did with legislation, so amendments to emotion, second, vote there could be so. If you need additional time to read this, in the meantime, we could still ask committee members to ask questions and make comments.
Yes, Ishman as the Hadexin Shea, Maria Bazoni Hamshire, or Jake for the chapter secretary and treasurer. I had trouble hearing the unmute.
Okay, Chinandata, hold on, yeah. We're right in the middle of reading some material here. Although I'm asking committee members to provide comments and questions. Just the aim of what we're doing here is to see if we're going to take this direction. Hello, Nido to Tanojo Abahazan. Now, then that's the direction we're going to move in. So, Chairman Nez, here on the call here, did you want to make a comment or ask questions?
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chair Walker. I do just thinking and reading the amendment that has been provided by our attorney, Ms. Kahn, and the amendment language. I do believe that the current chapter officials should not be subject to any sanctions, perhaps the chapter itself, but as I read it, in the interest of fairness, the OJTO chapter should not be sanctioned for actions described. It says, so does that, I just trying to read this, and I understand it's to teach the chapters how to better manage the chapter fund functions and funding issues. And I believe the officials should not be sanctioned, but the chapter itself is, and I see that there's no chapter ASC. So, Shananta, I'm reading this and I'm thinking that the chapters of OJTO. So how does this work if there's no sanction described in this report? I just have that question for our attorney, Vice Chair Walker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Liz, for the question there. Ms. Khan, Legislative Council, can you respond to that?
Mr. Vice Chair and Mr. Chairman Nez, members of the Resources and Development Committee. The purpose of the legislation was to impose sanctions. And by saying that both the chapter officials and the chapter not be sanctioned, it is, in one way, it's stating that that the Resources and Development Committee, in fact, is voting down the legislation. However, the and Resources and Development Committee can, by it without any amendments whatsoever, can vote down the legislation. And by voting down the legislation, you are saying you're not going for the sanctions of either of the officials or the chapter. However, and you can do that just by voting the whole thing down. The other way is to, through the findings, stating what you would be stating why you're voting it down, and in fact putting in another idea, a solution that allows the chapter to work for several more months, or a certain amount of more months to fix the situation. But the fact that the RDC would be saying it's unfair, and that point is in the findings, it is not in the approval part, it is in the findings part. And the findings gives the Navajo Nation and the Budget and Finance Committee an idea of what the Resources and Development Committee is thinking. The approval section is where the approval is, in this case, the stating that the chapter be given so many more months. That is the actual approval section. The findings gives the reader an idea of why the RDC is saying give them more months. However, this is your amendment. If you do not want to put in that it is unfair that the chapter be sanctioned, that can be taken out. Like I said, I was listening to the conversation, and that I just started writing what I was hearing. And I did say not all committee members agree, and that's the purpose of the putting the amendment before you, and that the other language with regard to the chapter shouldn't be sanctioned, that can be taken out of the findings, and you could vote on the legislation amending without that language. But it's the approval section that will be looked to in this case, saying that the chapter be given more time. The Resources and Development Committee and the Budget and Finance Committee through Title 12 is given the authority of whether to accept the Auditor General's report and the recommendation of sanctions. This is your time, RDC, to make a statement, to vote up or down to sanction, or to offer your suggestions as to how the issue should be resolved. In this case, if you decide to amend in a certain way, and let the Budget and Finance Committee listen to your reasoning, that helps the Budget and Finance Committee. But as you know, the Budget and Finance Committee is the final authority. They could remove all of the amendments that you make and go back to the original, or they could put in additional language. I just am putting this before you so that if you have a statement that you would like to make to the Budget and Finance Committee, and to, in fact, you would be making it also to the Auditor General's office, and you're making your thoughts known to the Division of Community Development. It can be done with an amendment to the legislation or the report, like I said. And in this case, just my listening to the discussion. Now, you members would decide on what the amendment should be. And in the findings, if it is your desire to remove the section of it being unfair to sanction the chapter as opposed to the officials, it is up to you to delete that, and that would not be part of the amendment that you would vote upon. Like I said, Title 12 gives Budget and Finance Committee and the Resources and Development Committee the authority to accept the sanctions that are being presented to you by the Auditor General. And it is Resources and Development Committee's time to speak. And I can fashion that after you have come to consensus as to what you want in the findings and the approval section. I'm trying to be as clear as possible, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee and the listening audience. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Khan, for the responses and the advisement and helping us here with this legislation. Although Chairman Nez, any follow-up questions there?
No, Honorable Vice Chair Walker, and thank you, Ms. Khan, for your explanation of the amendments and your recommendation. So I do certainly appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman Nez. Although Honorable Daniels, 12 months ago, 6 months, no, so Honorable T. Allen Begay,
Chairman, I have a question to the Legislative Council. She indicated that the Budget and Finance Committee has the authority to remove all the amendments. And I believe, can she cite the policy where it does say that? I believe only the council has the authority to remove amendments of the legislation. If this is a committee to another committee, I believe that whatever we make recommendation has to be intact. Chairman, that's my question to Legislative Council.
Thank you, Honorable Begay, for that question. Legislative Council, Ms. Khan, you provide a response to Delegate Begay.
Mr. Vice Chair, I am looking for the section of 164A, and let's see. With regard to the amendments that can be made, Mr. Vice Chair, I am looking at Title II, 164A10. And it says an amendment approved by a committee shall be included in the proposed resolution. And then, so that would be RDC making an amendment. A failed amendment may not be introduced at council unless a delegate obtains a written petition. Okay, so our reading, the Office of Legislative Counsel's interpretation of the statement, an amendment approved by a committee shall be included in the proposed resolution. So that means that an amendment that you make today can be included in the resolution. It then becomes part of the resolution. It goes over to the Budget and Finance Committee, and the Budget and Finance Committee also can make an amendment approved by a committee which shall be included in the proposed resolution. And that the Office of Legislative Counsel has taken the interpretation that one committee's amendment becomes part of the resolution. When it goes on, because the amendment is now included in the resolution, the next committee can make its own amendment to the resolution that is before them, which in this case would include RDC's amendment. That next committee can make the determination whether it wants to make an amendment, including taking out RDC's amendment through its own amendment. That is how the Office of Legislative Counsel has interpreted that sentence. Mr. Vice Chair and members of the RDC, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Khan. Honorable Begay, any follow-up questions, comments there?
Chairman, just to conclude the discussion, I'd like to make an amendment with the modification rather than 12 months, make it 6 months. That will be my motion, Chairman, to this legislation, as recommended by the Legislative Council.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Begay. So motions been made, committee members. Date Jean, 12 months. It is 6 months ago. The recommended language that we received through the email, and then what we've been discussing. So everything's referencing that language. It's called 12 months ago, 6 months ago. Honorable Begay, is there a second to this motion?
Delegate Stewart.
Honorable Stewart offers that second. Okay. So we do have a motion on the floor to amend this legislation. That would be amendment number 1. Committee members, any questions? Any more questions on this? If not, we can take a vote on the amendment. Honorable Freeland, how do you vote? You may need to unmute, Che. Okay. Nasana. Honorable Stewart, how do you vote? Honorable Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Stewart votes green. Honorable T. Allen Begay, how do you vote?
Chairman, Delegate Gale, green. Thank you.
Honorable Begay votes green. Honorable Daniels, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Daniel votes green. Honorable Chair Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Rick Nez votes green.
Okay, Shine, backing up a bit. Honorable Mark Freeland, how do you vote? Okay, so we have a vote of 4 in favor, Opposing, there are none. That motion carries. Vice Chair not voting here. So back to the main motion. Committee members, any other amendments? Any other comments and questions? If not, then we can vote on the main motion. Okay, calling for the votes. Honorable Freeland, how do you vote? Honorable Che Freeland, how do you vote? Honorable Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Stewart votes green. Honorable Key Allen Begay, how do you vote?
Chairman Kayla votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Begay votes green. Honorable Daniels, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Daniel votes green. Chairman Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Rick Nez votes green.
Honorable Nez votes green. We have a vote of 4 in favor. Opposed, there are none. Vice Chair not voting. This motion carries. The main motion for this legislation. Sponsor Che. Any last words there?
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. At the local level. I just want to thank the former chapter officials and chapter staff. That's what Diego fix all the findings. So thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much.
Okay, Hagoshin, Jawat Ella, Shiche, Nashi, Nani, Kato, Leto, here, all they have, we're on the call for this item here, DCD, ASC, SPPS, Untitled Chapter, Echo, here, with this legislation. So moving along, Chairman Nez, virtual gavel, Nando, Afka, back to you, sir.
Honorable Vice Chair Walker, when you sign the committee reports, it might be best for you to sign all 3 of the legislations. The next one as well. Honorable Vice Chair Walker.
Okay, don't see. Okay, staff, Ms. Begay, advisor, can you read the next legislation to record?
Vice Chair, I would respectfully request that Rodney reads this legislation into the record. It will be fully read into the record because RDC has final authority. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, Hagoshin, thank you for that. Mr. Tahi, you assist us in reading the legislation into record.
Yes, Chair. Attached is the legislative summary sheet tracking number 0171-21 dated August 3rd, 2021. The title of the resolution is an action relating to the Resources Development Committee amending RDCD-100-18, the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund project plans for crops year 2017 and 2018 by allocating $345,000 for use by the Natural Heritage Program. The legislation is read as be enacted. Section 1, Authority. A, the Resource and Development Committee of the Navajo Nation Council is authorized to exercise oversight authority over, among other things, water, land, grazing, agriculture, livestock, wildlife, chapter activities, and the economic and community development. 2 NNC Section 500C. B, Navajo Nation Council mandate the Resource and Development Committee to adopt an annual plans for agriculture infrastructure projects to be funded through the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund CO-57-16 as amendment, Section 4A6C. Section 2, findings. A, the Resource and Development Committee passed RDCD-100-21, an action relating to the Resource and Development Committee approving and adopting the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund project plans for crops year 2017 and 2018 as mandated by the Shishatani Fund Pasture Range and Forage Expenditure Plan enacted by CO-57-16 and amended by CMY-54-18 CD CR-100-21 is attached as Exhibit 5. B, the Navajo Nation Heritage Program has requested that the 345,000 allocated from the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund by RDCD 100-18 to the Fish and Wildlife Department for horse management reduction for wildlife habitat for year one funding be moved to the Natural Heritage Program project to review overdue grazing and agricultural land use permits that need to be returned to permit holders as soon as possible. The budget forms are attached as Exhibit 1. C, RDCD-100-18 at Section 5, page 3 of 4 states that the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund project plans be amended by the Resource and Development Committee from time to time as necessary to fulfill the mandates of CO-57-16 upon the recommendation of Division of Natural Resource and the Department of Agriculture. D, the Executive Director of the Division of Natural Resources, through his concurrences of the May 17, 2021 request for executive review memorandum attached as Exhibit 2, recommend the redistribution of the 345,000 from Resolution RDCD-100-21 from the use by the Fish and Wildlife Department for horse management reduction for wildlife habitat to the Natural Heritage Program projects to review overdue grazing and agricultural land use permit that needs to be returned to the permit holders as soon as possible. E, the Department of Agriculture supports the use of year one AIF allocation of 345,000 for the Fish and Wildlife Department Natural Heritage Program. The Department of Agriculture Projects Program Specialist Fertiline Nota August 4th, 2021 email stating his support is attached as Exhibit 3. The Executive Director Review document number 016438 with the Department of Justice Statement of Legal Significancy is attached as Exhibit 4. Section 3 amended RDCD-100-18, the Navajo Nation hereby amends RDCD-100-18 Exhibit C, the crop year 2017 Agriculture Infrastructure Fund plan as set in Exhibit 1. Attached is Exhibit 1, which is the Navajo Nation Budget Summary Program. Attached Exhibit 2 is a memorandum to Dominic Bial, Executive Director, Office of Management and Budget, dated May 17, 2021. Exhibit 3 is attached email from Ferdinand Nota. Exhibit 4 is attached executive official review. Attached is Exhibit 5, Resolution RDCD-100-18. which includes the exhibits attached to the resolution, Exhibit A and B. Last is the legislation number 017121, which is the internal public review publication. In addition to that is the 5-day comment period, which ended August 24, 2021. There is no comments supporting the legislation. There were no comments opposing the legislation. There is no comments and recommendation on this legislation also. Chair, members of the committee, that is the legislation read into the record number 017121.
Thank you, Mr. Tahi, for reading the legislation there. Yeah. Kinanta, is there a motion for this legislation?
Motion, Delegate Rick Nez.
Okay. Motion made by Chairman Nez. Is there a second?
Keller.
Okay, Honorable Begay offers that second. We have a motion and a second. Though we move to the sponsor, give him time to give the presentation. Sponsor, Che, Delegate Freeland, all your agents. You have the floor. Honorable Freeland. You may need to unmute yourself. Jay, press *6. Staff, is there a co-sponsor for this legislation?
Vice Chair, he is on the call, but I can't unmute him. I don't know if he is trying to unmute. He can press *6.
Honorable Walker, to answer your question, no, there is no co-sponsor. Honorable Mark Freeland is the only sponsor on this legislation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tahi, sponsor is having some technical difficulties here. Give him a minute or two. Give him a minute or two. Honorable Freeland.
Jay, I'm here, Jay.
Okay, you have the floor to present your legislation.
Thank you, Jay. I don't know if my agent's on the line. I don't know if she's on the line.
Hello, Delegate Freeland. Can you hear me? Hi, good afternoon. Sorry. Good afternoon. This is Leanna Begay from Navajo Fish and Wildlife Natural Heritage Program.
Okay, Ms. Begay, if I could go ahead and have you just tell the committee a little bit about the legislation. What the intent of the legislation is about. Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, RDC committee members and delegates who are on the call. So this legislation here is a request to change the
initial request, which was for the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund Year 1, which was identified and allocated towards the feral horse or horse management reduction for wildlife habitat project. And due to circumstances that I'm not really aware of or know about, that particular project was not moved forward when the funds were assigned and awarded. And so right now, the Natural Heritage Program is having some difficulties in terms of funding to support our some of our functions within the Heritage Program, and one of those being the biological review function. And so with discussions with the Division of Natural Resources, Dr. Shabala recommended that we go ahead and propose the change in the scope of work to the Natural Heritage Program in reviewing the agricultural land use permits and also the grazing permits as well that have been in the process. And it's been quite some time when folks have received a response on those. In addition to that particular assignment there, these funds would also help identify and hire an additional wildlife biologist to complete these biological reviews that are far behind in terms of being completed. As some folks know, the Natural Heritage Program does not have a biological reviewer at the moment, and so a lot of projects are being delayed due to this circumstance, and we're trying to fulfill and meet those obligations as best as we can among those that are within the program. And so these funds would help identify an additional biological reviewer and also an additional office specialist to help basically monitor and assist the customers who are inquiring not only for the agricultural land use permits or grazing permits, but also in general the biological review of the various projects that come to our office, and also including the home site lease reviews as well that our office receives. And so we did contact also the Department of Agriculture for some assistance and guidance, and that information is provided to you in the exhibit as the reporter had indicated. And so we were just, we did initially submit this to OMB, and at that time we were referred that we need to submit this for the RDC's review and approval. So that's pretty much in a nutshell the purpose of this particular request in supporting the Natural Heritage Program and continuing to provide the biological review functions that impacts so many different resources. And part of that is, of course, the development of waterline projects, looking at the landscape in terms of looking at conservation plans for these different requests for grazing permits as well. So it's all linked back to the landscape and looking at the assessment of endangered, threatened, sensitive species. And in the cases of the agriculture grazing permit reviews, also looking at the forage availability as well. And so we do get that information from BIA, and we started that process with BIA and looking at those conservation plans for permits that we did receive. And so we're going through that first phase with the Fort Defiance Agency, and so that's where we're learning a little bit more about the conservation plans and how the forage for the areas are being indicated and evaluated. And so that's additional emphasis and information that's of great need to our department as well. But I think as a whole for the nation, of having more information available for non-endangered, non-threatened, and non-sensitive species, so that way it can help us inform, what the availability is for natural vegetation out in the landscape as well. And so with that, that's the information I'd like to share with RDC. And if there are any questions, I can certainly try to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Freeland, or your agent, for giving the presentation on the legislation. Committee members, any questions, comments for the sponsor or agent?
Chairman Kell.
Honorable Begay, you have the floor.
If there's no question by other committee members, Chairman.
Okay. Committee members, any questions, comments? Before I give the floor back to Delegate Begay. If not, Hakushin. So let's go ahead, proceed. Honorable Begay.
Chairman, kudo legislation itani so it's brother, Mr. Freeland, ado kudo peso, tsanan nadoj, to different program and then you know, somehow, some way that it's easy to do, but the transfer at the administrative level or Winterot level. But yet we try to give some fundings to the local grazing officials, the farm board, that hagi base of chapati least no yego. I just want to raise that concern of how easy it is for us to transfer funding at the Winterot level. But I believe the intent of it is justified, dealing with grazing permits and other area that needs to be administered. But the question I have is that why, to some extent, we may be just supplementing what the BIA is supposed to be supplementing or giving fundings to the Navajo Nation. I guess maybe through the committee, the Division of Natural Resource, BIA had indicated that they have allocated $7 million to the Navajo Nation Division of Natural Resource. It may be, I don't know, just a direct request through the chair and the committee. Could I get a document outlining that particular funding that was given by the BIA to Division of Resource? The current budget, I believe I never heard this particular budget request through the fiscal year 2022 budget. They have unmet needs in other areas. Based on delegate, such as banani, and the other ship on night, the other ship on slate, the Halado, allow by the industry. So, I just like to get a request or get a response. If you could be able to provide me those documents that the BIA had given the Navajo Nation $7 million. Also, why the BIA is not providing these fundings on behalf of the Navajo Nation. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Begay, for the questions there. So, Honorable Freeland, your agent, can you provide a response?
Hello, Delegate Begay. Thank you for those questions. So in response to the request for why isn't the BIA providing?
Ms. Begay, go ahead and respond to that. So, Elia, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Delegate Freeland and Delegate Begay for recognizing those questions. So in response to the funds that were allocated, I'm not aware of that particular request. Maybe that could be a request that I could refer to our department manager, Director Gloria Tom, or I can even inquire with Dr. Shabala to see if we can, request that particular information for the delegate to review the information. of where the $7 million was allocated within the Division of Natural Resources. So I can certainly refer that question to her and then get your response on that. As for the second question, why hasn't BIA provided these fundings for the nation? That's a really good question. We're, I guess, basically at the crossroads of trying to identify and also make the request for additional funds to cover these costs. And it does take several years, I believe, from the response that I got from BIA to get additional funding to our program. So we did try to make those requests early on this year to see if we can get those additional funds to cover the cost for the program, but unfortunately that wasn't successful. But I'm certainly willing to discuss more with BIA to see if there are other ways to try to identify additional funds through our 638 contract as well. But I don't really have a clear answer on that either. That's a really good question, but I'm willing to find and identify additional funding for our program with BIA's assistance as well.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Begay, any follow-up questions, comments?
Chairman, I really don't have a follow-up question, but like I said, even though passing this legislation, could we make a directive after that? We get a copy of that budget detail that BIA is referencing that they had given the Navajo Nation some funding. Chairman?
Okay, thank you, Honorable Begay. Committee members, any other questions, comments to the legislation?
Vice Chairman Walker, may I make a comment? This is Gloria Tom.
Okay, hold on. Committee members, if there are no questions, comments, I'm going to allow time for Ms. Tom to give some comments or information. Ms. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the RDC Committee and Chairman Nez. In regards to this proposed legislation, the Bureau of Indian Affairs has been allocating through a 638 contract to the Natural Heritage Program a base funding amount, and that base funding amount has not changed in quite a number of years, for over 10 years. And the department, along with the program, has been requesting additional funding each time we meet with the BIA to negotiate a new contract. We received the biological review functions, and then more recently, the home site lease compliance reviews as well from BIA without any additional funding. And that is a point that we have brought forth to BIA, and every time we negotiate with them on a new contract. And that has basically hasn't been recognized by BIA. And we have recently requested a meeting with the BIA, our contracting office, and along with our division leadership, and also the OPVP office to meet with BIA to discuss this issue, because the contract can no longer support that review function without additional financial support. We recently had to lay off 2 individuals, 2 employees, and all of the reviews are currently being absorbed now by existing staff, including our wildlife manager, Ms. Begay. And thus this has resulted in a tremendous amount of delays, of which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. So in terms of trying to rectify the situation, we're submitting this AIF proposal with support from Division to reallocate the funding that we received for year one. And also, we are working with the ARPA Regulatory Review Committee to also provide additional funding for review support as well. So there's different alternatives that we're looking for, but this one here would be an immediate fix to the funding problem that the Natural Heritage Program is facing. We do need our reviewers back on. We do need to start moving on issuing biological compliances, not only for water lines, right-of-ways, and other projects, but also for home site leases. And but we are continuing to work with the Bureau of Indian Affairs on addressing the funding issues that we're facing with this contract. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Tom, for that information. Honorable Begay, any other questions, comments?
Chairman, Delegate Allen, no, I don't have additional question, but the only thing, I appreciate Ms. Tom providing additional information on this particular situation. Compliance and working on the review process for any project. So she did reference the APRA development. Based on yellow nominate the appreciate that response to one certificate. Although was this part of the unmet need that was submitted with the fiscal year 2022 budget? So any answer, I suppose the legislation, but I'm just trying to resolve to say that why isn't the funding that being sought rather than just transferring the funding for the intended purpose, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for those additional comments and some questions. Sponsor and agent, any feedback there or responses?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. As well as Ms. Tom, thank you for that further explanation as well. It is understandably, yes, a thoroughly complicated matter to kind of iron out and get out in place, but understandably, I appreciate Ms. Tom's candidness about talking about the BIA and bringing in the BIA's request continually. I'm not a member of TIBIC. I want to attend the TIBIC meetings, but this is something we should bring up at TIBIC as well. I don't know if any of my colleagues are on the line that go to TIBIC, but this is something we need to talk to the BIA more thoroughly about. How do we address this matter, going forward? Because it sounds like year after year for the last 10 years, this request has been put forth, but without any approval. So I want to continue to request the advocacy and the continued, of course, discussions with BIA. I don't know if BIA is on the line, but these discussions need to continue to happen, and we need to continue to advocate as well for programs like as such. It's very unfortunate to hear of layoffs and of individuals being to lose their jobs, but then it's always that complicated situation, especially when there's funding cuts or if there's matters of when instances have to happen when our staff has to work with more for less. So I just want to encourage the staff and of course thank my colleagues ask for your favorable support on this legislation. So thank you. Okay.
Machine, thank you, Honorable Freeland. Committee members, any questions, comments? Any more questions and comments? Sounds like we have more advocacy work here to do after this legislation. So, or outside the legislation, just to continue focusing on continued advocacy, especially where the BIA is concerned. Ko hotela sinanda taspa si. At the end, I could call for the vote. So at this time, I'll ask for your votes. How do you vote, Honorable Freeland?
I'll vote green.
Honorable Freeland votes green. How do you vote, Honorable Stewart?
Guess green. Yes, green.
Okay. Honorable Stewart Green votes green. Honorable Key Allen Begay, how do you vote?
Chairman Kellen votes green. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable Begay votes green. Honorable Daniels, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Okay. Honorable Daniel votes green. Chairman Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Rick Nez votes green.
Okay. Chairman Nez votes green. We have a vote of 5 in favor. Opposed? There are none. Motion carries. And the Vice Chair does not vote. Thank you, Honorable Che, all your agents for presenting the legislation.
Yeah, the thoughts, colleagues, honorable colleagues of the Resource and Development Committee. Thank you very much. Our agents.
Okay, Hakoshi. Thank you. We're done with legislations. We have item E, approving to reschedule the 2-day joint meeting, RDC BNF leadership meeting with CPK Insurance to September 23rd and 24th, 2021. Location of the meeting will be in Scottsdale, Arizona. Ms. Begay, you want to speak to this? Why don't we establish a motion first? Is there a motion?
Can you hear me,
Members?
Vice Chair? This is Shammy.
Yes, I can hear you.
This particular item is rescheduling the 2-day work session that we had approved in July for BNF and RDC to travel to Scottsdale for a meeting with CPK. And it was set for August 26 and 27, tomorrow and Friday. However, there was a hole on our request memo, and it wasn't approved until last week. So by then, RDC committee members, I've already moved on in scheduling meetings, and we just had to cancel reschedule. So I've been looking at September 23rd and 24th. That's the only day that we have that are 2 days that are available. So that's what I have there for you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Begay, for the information. Committee members, is there a motion to approve this item?
Chairman Kellen.
Okay, Honorable Begay, motions. Is there a second?
Freeland.
Stewart.
Honorable Freeland offers that second. So this is rescheduling that meeting. CPK Insurance even, yeah.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
Just
Mr. Gay?
additional information. There will be a dinner meeting scheduled with Navajo Nation Gaming Enterprise during that time as well. But I will work with the enterprise on what evening that will happen. They would like to meet with both RDC and BNF at that time. So those would be the two meetings that would happen at that time. Back to you.
Thank you for that information. Committee members, any questions, comments? If not, we can proceed to vote. Okay, how do you vote, Honorable Freeland?
Green.
Honorable Freeland votes green. How do you vote, Honorable Stewart?
Green.
Honorable Stewart votes green. Honorable Kiel Begay, how do you vote?
Chairman Kiel votes green.
Okay, Honorable Begay votes green. Honorable Daniels, how do you vote?
Vote is.
Okay, Honorable Daniel votes green. Chairman Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Rick Nez votes green. Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Nez votes green. We have a vote of 5 in favor. Opposed, there are none. Vice Chair does not vote, so motion carries. So the next item, scheduling a leadership meeting. This is item F, scheduling a leadership meeting with Division of Economic Development.
Mr. Vice Chair, may I?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
This is scheduling a leadership meeting with Division of Economic Development and Division's Navajo Nation Business Site Lease Approving Committee, RBDO, BIA, Navajo Nation Land Department, General Land Development regarding business site lease. Last week, we received a report from the Business Site Leasing Approving Committee. There were several questions that were raised by Kiel and Begay and requested it for a leadership meeting. Will coordinate with DED. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Begay. Shananta, date sigishin haone naka tabiga. Ms. Begay, can you offer some suggested dates?
Now, I have 21st open. September 21st.
September 21st, okay. Committee members, is there a motion to approve this item?
Motion, Delegate Rick Nez.
Freeland, second.
Chairman Nez motions, seconded by Honorable Freeland. The suggested date, September 21st.
Vote.
Okay, Shahi, we can proceed to vote on this. If there are no questions, comments, committee members? Okay, calling for the vote. Honorable Freeland, how do you vote?
Green.
Green. Honorable Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Stewart votes green. Honorable Key Ellen Begay, how do you vote?
Chairman Kiel votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Begay votes green. Honorable Daniels, how do you vote?
Green. Green.
Honorable Daniel votes green. Chairman Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Rick Nez votes green.
Okay, Honorable Nez votes green. We have a vote of 5 in favor. Opposing, there are none. Vice Chair not voting. Nakoshi. Thank you for that. Taking care of that item. Nasando, scheduling a leadership meeting. Mr. Gay, can you present this?
Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, DA, yeah, this request came from Delegate Mark Freeland requesting that we schedule a work session or a leadership meeting with the Eastern Navajo Land Board regarding the discussion on their tri-party agreement and other related issues. Right now, I have September 13 open. Oh, and September 2nd. Mark?
Okay.
September 2nd already next week.
Yeah, September 13th too.
13th, Shabiga. And if we could also invite the BIA and the BLM to listen in.
Okay, so we're saying September 2nd, yeah.
13th.
The date we're 13th, okay. Okay, committee members, let's establish a motion. Is there a motion to approve this request for leadership meeting? Okay, Honorable Che, motions. Honorable Freeland.
Second, Delegate Nez.
Is there a second? Okay, Chairman Nez offers the second. So, leadership meeting on September 13. Are there questions, comments, committee members?
No.
If not, okay, if not, then we can proceed to vote. Honorable Freeland, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Freeland votes green. Honorable Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Stewart votes green. T.L. Begay voted green via text. Honorable Daniels, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Daniels votes green. Chairman Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Nez votes green.
Okay, Honorable Nez votes green. We have a vote of 5 in favor. Opposed? There are none. Vice Chair not voting. So the motion carries. So another leadership meeting to be scheduled. Ms. Begay, can you present this? You may have to unmute, Ms. Begay.
I was sure talking to myself. Okay, this particular item came about during the meeting that we had with Cellular One on FirstNet, and AT&T representative was invited, and they called in. So after the meeting, Delegate Begay requested for a leadership meeting be scheduled with AT&T to talk more about the FirstNet and the subcontractors which is held when Aben, yeah. Right now, the open date I have is September 2nd, 8 well, actually 27, 28 $. Back to you, Chair. Maybe,
okay, yeah.
maybe Key Allen can comment on it.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's establish a motion in a second to talk about this item. Committee members, is there a motion to approve?
Delegate Rick Nez motions.
Okay, Chairman Nez motions. Is there a second?
Stewart.
It'll get Honorable Stewart offers that second. Akoshin, Seleki Alan Begay, are you on the call still? I know he said he was driving. Honorable Begay. Yeah, I said he might lose signals. I think he's lost the cell phone signals. So he's out of range at this time. Shananta, suggested dates are September 2nd, 27th, and 28th.
Let's choose the 27th, Chair, Vice Chair.
Okay. Nutrition Committee members, any preferences there on the dates? 27. That's no. Chairman Nez.
That
So,
sounds good. Give me time to work with the company.
Okay. So that there's no to nenda ashin ati totally 27th, September 27th. With that, we're in consensus. There are no other questions, comments. I believe there's consensus here, so we can vote on this item. Calling for the vote. How do you vote, Honorable Freeland?
Green.
Honorable Freeland votes green. Honorable Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Okay, green. Honorable Stewart votes green. Honorable Key Allen Begay, how do you vote? So any text on green, no? So we'll include that in the tally here. Honorable Daniels, how do you vote?
I vote green. Thank you.
Honorable Daniels votes green. Chairman Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Nez votes green.
Okay, Honorable Chairman Nez votes green. So we have a vote of 5 in favor. Opposing, there are none. Vice Chair not voting. Motion carries. We've approved this item. Are there any items?
Honorable Vice Chair
Chairman
Walker.
Nez. Yes, Chair Nez.
I would like to suspend the floor rules and add a leadership meeting with Department of Justice as well as Division of Community Development to talk about the chapter official stipend and shortfall, and perhaps OOC can be on the call as well. So if I could suspend the floor rules and schedule it for August 30th, which is Monday.
Chair, please include Budget and Finance Committee as well, because they also raised that question on how. Did you hear me?
Okay.
And
Yes.
they wanted to learn more about how to address the chapter official stipend shortfalls and why it's occurring every year. Those are some of the questions that needs to be answered.
Honorable Vice Chair Walker, I would like to include that as well, Budget and Finance, RDC, DCD, and DOJ, the leadership meeting on chapter official stipends.
Agustin, motion to suspend floor rules here. Ishin, another detail. Is there a motion to that motion? I mean, is there a second to that motion? Chalanda.
Chairman Kellen.
Okay, Honorable Freeland seconds the motion to, and then motion made by Honorable Chair Nez to suspend the floor rules. So let's take a vote on that. Suspending the floor rules requires a vote. So how do you vote, Honorable Freeland?
Green.
Green, okay. Honorable Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Stewart votes green. Honorable K. Allen Begay, how do you vote?
Chairman Kellen votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Begay votes green. Honorable Daniels, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Daniels votes green. Chairman Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Nez votes green.
Okay. Honorable Chair Nez votes green. We have a vote of 5 in favor. Opposing, there are none. Vice Chair not voting. So we've added another item to our agenda here. So, Ishi, item.
Vice Chair?
So, August 30, no, you have to Chairman Nez, the leadership meeting, no. So we have a 18 bandit, okay, Ms. Begay.
Vice Chair, members of the committee, this request for a leadership meeting came about either Monday when RDC went before Budget and Finance budget hearing. They had some questions about the chapter official stipend shortfall. The job on the date before the budget goes to the council, NABI and Council Dano. So August 30th would be the only date available. And I've already contacted Dr. Yellowman, and she's agreeable to doing a presentation on August 30th. So, back to you.
Okay, thank you for that information. Is there a motion to approve this item? Committee members?
Kellen.
Honorable Brigade motions. Is there a second?
Stewart.
Delegate Nez. Chairman Nez offers that second. Are they any questions, comments on the leadership meeting request for August 30? There being no questions, comments, we can proceed to vote. Calling for the vote. Honorable Freeland, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Freeland votes green. Honorable Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Stewart votes green. Honorable K. Allen Begay, how do you vote?
Chairman Kellen votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Begay votes green. Honorable Daniels, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Daniels votes green. Chairman Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Nez votes green.
Chair Nez votes green. We have a vote of 5 in favor. Opposing, there are none. Vice Chair not voting. But taking care of this item. We're at the end of our agenda here. Sheen, close a meeting. Announcements. Staff, are there announcements?
Vice Chair, I don't have any announcement at this time, except that you have a Navajo Nation Council special session coming up on tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I believe it is. Plus, I think you have a NABI meeting as well tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Committee members, any announcements? If not,
Motion to adjourn. Delegate Nez.
Yes.
Second, Freeland.
Okay, motion to adjourn, made by Chairman Nez and second by Honorable Freeland.
Delegate Walker?
Someone said something. Fela, go ahead. Yes.
Vice Chair, I believe that is Melinda that was trying to speak.
Okay, Ms. Siako.
Thank you, Vice Chairman and members of RDC. Before you adjourn, I just wanted to quickly mention that on August 31st, it has been confirmed to have the meeting with the new Navajo Regional Director for BIA, Navajo Region, and it will be at 12 p.m. at the council chambers. The agenda and call-in information was sent out to the 24th Navajo Nation Council this afternoon. So I just wanted to make that follow-up from this morning's question to the BIA and coordinating with the Speaker's office. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Siako. Okay, so back to the adjournment. There's a motion, there's a second. Okay, Honorable Begay.
Chairman, station, Belinda China Aniki, that's more of a formal introduction to the council. I did mention, can we, RDC, meet one-on-one with the new director and all of the staff, the key staff from BIA, the transportation, division of natural resource, real estate, and so on. I think there's a lot of issues that we need to deal with and see how the new director will be helping the Navajo Nation in the heritage program. We've been having the same budget for the past 10 years now. Home site lease process, farmland, grazing permits, Sato be nahot ekohit alay Sato yinhi kai yedo hit up and hat ato. So I'm asking maybe request RDC member that are the Resource Development Committee Chair and Vice Chair send a request letter to the division, the BIA Director, and when it's feasible for him to sit down with us to discuss the Navajo Nation issue of it. Chairman, that's my request. Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Begay. Chairman Nez, Ashin, I could have a letter to BIA Regional, the new director. Then we can formally approve on our side, RDC's committee side, committee schedule that evening. So, but to initiate the request, just a letter.
Yes, Honorable Vice Chair Walker, we can certainly do that. I'll contact their coordinator over there, Ms. Cheryl Curley. So she's always good about coordinating scheduling. So I'll do that. Thank you.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair,
thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Yes. Go ahead.
After you get a available date from Ms. Curley, then provide that information to me so that we could put it on the agenda and get a formal approval from RDC on Wednesday next week. We can start making arrangements to set up the meeting. Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
So, Shananta, we have a motion on the floor, second, to adjourn this meeting, and call for the question here. Honorable Freeland, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Freeland votes green. Honorable Stewart, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Stewart votes green. Honorable Keelan Begay, how do you vote?
Chairman Keelan votes green, thank you.
Honorable Begay votes green. Question. Honorable Daniels, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Daniels votes green. Chairman Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Nez votes green. Thank you.
Okay, Chair Nez votes green. We have a vote of 5 in favor, opposing none. Vice Chair not voting. Motion carries. We adjourned this meeting at 3:58 p.m. I'll present so I'll be signing off. Thank you.
Vice Chair, this is Shami.
Okay.
When will you be available to sign the committee reports and the vote tallies? We have them ready.
Okay.
Unless you want a staff member to drive out there and meet you, we need to know that so we can make travel arrangements.
Okay. I have a meeting that I have to be involved in, one of my chapters. I'll cover the probably late Wednesday afternoon, but the show.
Tomorrow, if you have a meeting there tomorrow, I'll make arrangements to see if Rodney can drive down there and get your signature.
Okay. I'll let you know. Thank you. Everyone, I'm signing off. Take care. Everyone have a good day. Go on there.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair Walker.